Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I am coming at you guys with a series idea that I had that I'm gonna put into place today. I thought I would do a series over the fruit of the Spirit and what does that look like to actually live it out. I have this cup that I will link down below, but this cup I bought I don't even know, probably over a year and a half ago. And I was looking at it the other day, just studying it, and it has all of the fruit of the Spirit listed out on it. And I realized that I had no idea where that came from in the Bible, and I had no idea what I could do practically to actually live those out. And I knew I was giving that out to the world, but not knowing. If someone asked me about this cup, I would have no idea how to explain it to them other than I know what the fruit of the Spirit is. So I did some research for myself, did some studying, and I realized that a lot of you probably also have the same thing of not knowing how do I put into practice love. If you see Sadie coming in and out, she's hanging out with me today. But I realized after doing some studying that a lot of you may also be in the same boat of knowing what they are, being able to memorize what the fruit of the Spirit is, but maybe not knowing exactly how to live that out in life and how to point it out in the Bible maybe. So if that is you, I hope that you'll stick around and see what I've learned, and hopefully I can teach you something. Again, I did not go to Bible college. I did not study the Bible with professors, and so this is just things that I've learned. So take it as you will, basically, and do your own research, 100%. So let's get into the series. Today we're starting with love. If you guys have your Bibles, you guys can turn with me. If not, I'll put it on the screen. We are going to be starting in Galatians 5 in verse 22 through 23. This is where the original fruit of the Spirit verse is, and I will read it for you. It says, I also read NIV, so if you're reading a different version, it might say something different, but this is the NIV version. But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, forbearance, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Against such thing there is no law. And then I also like down a little bit in verse 25 where it says, since we live by the Spirit, let us keep in step with the Spirit. We can read that, right? But what does that actually mean? Today we're going to talk about love specifically, and then in the next series we'll do joy and so on and so forth. So when I was thinking about love in the Bible, I was like, well, there's probably so many examples of love in the Bible, but I found that love is explained differently in each of these verses. So these are just some that stood out to me. So let's talk about them. The first one that stood out to me, I think will come to mind for a lot of you, which is 1 Corinthians 13. So let's turn there now. This is probably one of the most famous verses about love in the whole Bible. You've probably heard it before, but let me read it just in case you haven't. We're going to be reading 1 Corinthians 4 through 7 and also verse 13. You can read all of those verses 4 through 13 to get another better understanding, but these are just the ones that stood out to me in that. Love is patient, love is kind, it does not envy, it does not boast, it is not proud, it does not dishonor others, it is not self-seeking, it is not easily angered, it keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices within the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, and always perseveres. And then verse 13 says, and now these three remain, faith, hope, and love, but the greatest of these is love. So, obviously there's a little bit in between that, verses 8 through 12, which again, you can read. It's another good example. It keeps going. But something that I was always taught when I was a little girl was that when I was looking for a partner and I wanted to make sure that they truly loved me and were the one, I was supposed to replace love in those verses with that partner's name, which is really good advice if you're a young girl looking for a husband. But in trying to figure out how we should honor love in our life, we need to replace love with our name in that. So are we patient? Am I kind? Do I envy? Do I boast? Am I proud? Do I dishonor others? Am I self-seeking? Those are the things you need to be asking yourself to make sure that you're loving others in a good light. I think that's something that a lot of people, if you have a prayer board or something that you look at daily, putting that verse on there and consistently asking yourself and keeping yourself in check and making sure that you're doing these things is a great way to stay on track with loving others. Let's turn to some other verses that I think also give a good definition of love. So the first one that stood out to me was John 15:13. Let's turn there now. Okay, John 15, I'm actually going to read 12 and 13. My command is this: love each other as I have loved you. Greater love has no one than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends. I think that this shows, and along with some of the other verses that I'm going to read, that love is an action. Love is not just words. Love is doing something to show someone else that you care for them. Love is laying down one's life for your friends and family. The next verse we're going to look at is also in John, and this is the example that I feel like Jesus is telling us this, right? Jesus is telling us you have to be willing to lay down your life for someone else, but we're thinking, I'm not laying down my life for anyone. Maybe my mom, maybe my kid, maybe somebody who really means a lot to me, but just my friend. How could I lay down my life, you know? How could I give something up like that with that much importance to show someone that I love them? Well, God did this. So let's go look in John 3:16 through 18, which I'm sure most of you know if you're watching this video, but if you're not, this is going to be one of the most impactful verses you ever read in the Bible. All right, let me read it for you. For God so loved the world that he gave his one and only Son, that whoever believes in him shall not perish, but have eternal life. For God did not send his Son into the world to condemn the world, but to save the world through him. Whoever believes in him is not condemned, but whoever does not believe stands condemned already, because they have not believed in the name of God's one and only Son. So Jesus is telling you to love by giving up the things that matter to you, by giving up your life. And God did this by sending his Son in his form as a human to the earth to be sacrificed for all of us. He gave up the thing that he cared about most, because he loved us so much. Next, I'm going to turn to Luke 6 and read verse 35. But love your enemies, do good to them, and lend to them without expecting to get anything back. Then your reward will be great, and you will be children of the Most High, because he is kind to the ungrateful and wicked. This also shows that love is not going to be easy to give. Love is something that you have to choose to do, even when it's someone who may not deserve that love that you're giving them. It might be someone who's really rude to you. It might be who you consider your number one enemy, but you have to love, because that is what the Spirit does. It is love. And it shows in this verse also that Jesus loved those who were wicked to him, who didn't follow him, who chose the wrong path. He still loved them. So we have to do the same if we want to be walking with the Spirit. I have 2 more verses to show you. This next one's going to be in 1 John 5, verse 3. Let's turn there now. In fact, this is love for God, to keep his commands, and his commands are not burdensome. As well as keeping love for other people, we have to love God. And how do you do that other than to just tell God that you love him? You love God by following the things that he says to follow, to listen to the rules that he gives you, to not sin in worldly ways that we are able to avoid. That is how we show God that we love him. The last verse that I'm going to read to you guys is Mark 12, verse 30 and 31. So let's go there now. Love the Lord your God with all of your heart, with all of your soul, and with all of your mind, and with all of your strength. The second is this: love your neighbor as yourself. There is no commandment greater than these. So we're supposed to follow God's commandments and God's rules. And God's greatest rule, which is listed in Mark, is to love one another. So above all else, we have to love other people. Even when it's hard and even when we do not feel like it. I think as someone who is recently married within the past year, loving someone is a choice. There are days when I wake up and I just don't have a lot of love to give. I don't have a lot of love to spare for anyone else, but I have to love my husband because that is the greatest of all my earthly loves, and I have to love him. So waking up and choosing to love on days when I don't feel like I can love is hard, and it's not easy at all. There are times when my family or my friends hurt my feelings or do something that I feel like I would never do that. That's just not who I am. But you have to choose to love those people because they're in your life and you do care about them, maybe just not in that moment. I think love can be overpowered sometimes by worse emotions such as anger or jealousy or any of the really strong bad emotions that we feel sometimes. I think they can overrule our love for other people sometimes, and then we act out on those emotions, right? If we're angry, we're going to act out on that, and we forget that we love that person for a second. We forget that we would never act that way if we weren't angry with them, until we're sitting back later thinking, wow, that was a lot. Why did I react that way? I should have reacted with love and grace and mercy. I find myself doing that quite a bit in my life. I think that a lot of us would admit that love seems easy to give, but in reality turns out to be not as easy as we thought it was going to be, and actually quite a bit harder than we thought it would be to give. So I want to talk a little bit about practical application. What does this look like to live love out on the daily? When I was thinking about this before I filmed this, I was like, oh, I don't even know how to love sometimes. How can I tell other people how to love other people? And I felt like I was just being shown the 5 love languages, which most of you probably know, but if you don't, there are 5 love languages. I think most of the time you hear about them when you're talking about a partner, a husband, a wife, a boyfriend, a girlfriend. You hear about the love languages. But I think we forget that this is practical knowledge for all of our relationships, all of our friendships. The 5 love languages are quality time, acts of service, words of affirmation, giving gifts, and physical touch. I think some of these are easier than others to fulfill, especially when it's not a partner relationship. So here are some ideas for ways to use this in a friendship way, a family way, things outside of just a romantic relationship. Quality time looks like going out for coffee and listening to another person talk about their life, just giving them an ear. Quality time looks like spending time doing something that the other person really enjoys, even when you might not enjoy that. I know that my sister really enjoys baking, and sometimes I bake, but most of the time I'm just not really good in the kitchen. But that could be something that I do with her that maybe I don't enjoy, but she really does. I know that my dad really enjoys going out and working in the garage. So if I wanted to spend quality time with him, I could go out into the garage, even though that's not something I normally do, just to spend some time with him. The next one is acts of service. This one sometimes feels the easiest to me, sometimes feels the hardest for me. I think it feels hard because it's hard to know what someone else needs in specific moments. So I think communication is really needed in this one. But acts of service can be so many different things. Just doing something kind to help someone else out. It could be cooking for someone else or cleaning for someone else or just doing something that they need done. Words of affirmation is probably the easiest one on this list. I think just compliment other people. When you see a friend and you really like their shirt or you really like the perfume they're wearing that day, or anything, just compliment and tell them they're doing a good job and give encouragement. Giving gifts is also an easy one sometimes for people. If you're a good gift giver, if you're not, maybe this one's not for you. But just thinking of other people, even when it's not Christmas, it's not their birthday, it's nothing special, just showing them that you care by giving them something that you know they need or want. And then the last one is physical touch. This one's really hard for me with people who aren't in a romantic relationship with me. And my husband, I can hug and kiss him, and that's no big deal. But how do you do that when it's someone else? Hugging people shows that you care. When you meet someone or you see someone for the first time, you give them a hug. That's a good way. If someone's talking to you about something very serious, just giving them a touch on the arm or hand to show that you care and you're there with them, I think that shows a lot. Those are the two examples that I know of. If you have any other ones for that one, let me know, because I was really struggling to come up with more for that. But I think those are really good practical ways to show love to other people. And I know this was a lot, so if you have any questions or any comments, or you know more about this topic than me, please let me know in the comments, because I'm sure other people would love to know what you think, to know that other people are going through the same thing as them. I hope that the Lord is blessing you in so many amazing ways this week, and I can't wait to continue this series. I think next I'm gonna do joy. So if you have any recommendations for that, please let me know. But I will see you guys in my next video. Bye!